There's a note, Rabbi, on my computer that says it's now streaming live on YouTube.
Yeah, we're on live. So welcome everyone to our weekly interview show, Rabbi Interviews. Sorry it took us a second. As always, technological difficulties. We had switched the password to YouTube and it wasn't automatic. So we had to go find that new password. So welcome everybody. We're so thrilled to be interviewing Reverend Stephen Williams today, a good friend of mine and a person who's meant a lot to the community of Savannah. This will be our last interview before the break, but we're privileged to have people here who are going to interview him and ask questions. We're going to talk a little bit about his time in Savannah, how things have changed, a little bit about the Christmas season, and of course, a lot about the interview process, not the interview, the interfaith process in Savannah. So he was first called as a minister in 1994 after serving congregations in California, Jersey, and Tennessee to come to Savannah, where he became the minister at First Presbyterian. He became later commissioner to the General Assembly and is active in several organizations in the city. He was awarded the Merrill Fellowship for study at Harvard Divinity School and appointed a Guthrie Scholar at Columbia Theological Seminary, which is really amazing. He holds a Master of Divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary and a Doctorate of Divinity from Columbia. He has a wonderful wife named Claire, and he has 3 daughters, Kate, Lydia, and Zoe. And he's been a friend of mine since I first came here, really one of the leaders of the interfaith world, and certainly I assume the leader in the First Presbyterian world, which I just learned that it's not the only First Presbyterian church in the country. There's others. So welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
So we have people that'll ask questions as we go through, but first of all, where were you born and raised?
I'm a proud Hoosier, born in Indianapolis and spent some time there. And my mother grew up on a farm in Butler County, Kentucky. So we spent a lot of time there with her extended family. And so I sort of claim both the bluegrass state as home. And been here in Savannah, I've 26 years, something like that, and it's gone by fast. But I do need to say that you have quite a catch as a rabbi, because Christian churches will sometimes say, "Oh, we looked all around the Southeast for our latest minister, or we interviewed people from throughout the state." But you must know your story is that the rabbi was on a mission, a work and study in Kenya, Africa. So you can say you searched the globe, the world. And it was and back in those years, this kind of technology wasn't quite as used as frequently or as reliably as now. So, I always find that impressive that they searched the whole world for you. Found you in Kenya.
Skype at 3 a.m.
There you go.
Yes.
But our congregations, our two congregations have a long history. We were First Presbyterian, and I guess it's a little moxie that we took the name because the Independent Presbyterian Church on Chippewa Square, it organized shortly after the colony was established here. And it sort of birthmates with your very historic congregation. But it was they called it independent. And the use of that term at that time was independent of the state Anglican Church of Britain. But then Presbyterians are a connectional church, like Episcopals and Methodists. We're tied together with other congregations. And in the early years of the colony, Independent Presbyterian was the one and only. But by the 1820s, there was a presbytery in Georgia, and some of the members of that church said, "Well, now we got a presbytery, let's join it." They were a tiny minority, and so they broke away from Independent Presbyterian Church. But then they said, "Well, we're really the first true Presbyterian church." Church squabbles have always existed, even in the Bible. And so they took that name because they said, "You're really not following the polity of being a Presbyterian linked with other congregations." And so, shortly after we were organized, we ended up moving to Monterey Square. And so you probably know this history. Maybe some that are on the YouTube do not, though. And we had a structure where the United Way building is now. That used to be, part of the Armstrong City College. And but before that was built in the like 1950, there was a structure, and we have photographs and paintings of that side of Monterey Square, and the two structures, the two sanctuaries, look almost alike. The style, the Gothic style, both were built. What year was your congregation?
We were
building?
completed in 1878, this building.
Okay, ours was 1872. So right
So
after,
yeah, everybody was in the 1870s. It was all neo-Gothic.
yeah, right after the war, there was, we started building it, I think in like 1855, and things got, delayed big time. So,
But so what? Yeah, we still invite you guys for the interfaith downtown service.
yeah, we're still sort of quasi downtown, and when I arrived in 1994, my first week on the job here, I called Rabbi's predecessor, Arnold Belzer, and I said, well, I want to meet my fellow clergy. And so the first clergy visit I had that week was with your congregation, and I thought that was kind of symbolic that we reached out to each other that way. So.
Yeah, it's been great. We do a lot of things together, obviously less right now, but we'll start up again. Hopefully we'll be babysitting for Easter, but we'll see if that's actually a possibility. And so you what did you do? Did you go straight into ministry, or did you first?
I did. After college, my college roommate, he went off on a trip for a year, just trying to figure out whether he'd go to graduate school or what he was going to do. And I sort of had the same tentativeness about a calling into ministry, but I was one of the few. A lot of people in college kind of take a pause from their religious upbringing, but I did not. I attended church throughout college. So I said, well, I think I'll go to seminary for 1 year. And the training for Presbyterian ministers is a 3-year master's degree program. That's the basic credential. And so I didn't even enroll in the master's program, but I guess I hedged my bets because I took all the required classes. But that first year, I talked my way into working in a state prison, and it was really a big deal for me and discerning a call, because I didn't really want to become a prison chaplain, but I really saw the gospel as very important to people on the edges of life, and how in some cases it really transformed a few people there. And so with that firsthand experience, kind of two things happened. One is I enrolled in the master's program and didn't miss a beat because I had all the courses. And then two is ever since then, I've had some, wherever I've lived, either California, New Jersey, I've got some justice ministry of prison or jails as part of my work. In many cases, I go in and teach the Bible. In other cases, I try to get my church members. And right now, this congregation has a fairly strong ministry in the Chatham County Jail. Of course, with COVID, that's we can't go in right now, but volunteers go in weekly into the county jail, and I used to do it for many years. So, but anyway, that's I served a church in California, Southern California, college town there. Returned, and I was in a church in Princeton, and then in East Tennessee. Still have dear friends from the church in Knoxville, Tennessee, and still have my UT tie. I didn't attend UT, but if you just pass through town, you become a big football fan. And then one of our daughters, they're all adults now, but one was born in New Jersey, and then two are native Tennesseans. And we made the happy move here in '94. We love Savannah, the small, it's big enough to have a lot of culture, but it's a small town as well. And we enjoy the history of this place and the beauty of the historic district, and then the beauty of the rivers and marshes. So it's a nice place.
Did you come here? Were you selected to come here? Were you asked to come here?
Well, that's a good question. Denominations, are in many ways they're a little different, and in other ways they for Christians, we're reading the same Bible, trying to follow the same Lord, but there are differences. Some of it's kind of historic, and then it's for us, congregations call pastors. So it would be probably like how the search committee found you in Kenya, that there may have been some broad denominational base or database, but really it's the local people that and I think in whatever their religion, they're saying this is not just a beauty contest or whatever with our own human judgment, but we see God's hand in it as well. So it was a committee of people. Presbyterians, our very name means elder. That's a Greek word for elder. And not that every church leader is elderly, but they are elected, and it's a representative form. So it's not purely congregational in the sense of like everybody making the decisions, but rather they elect representatives. And a lot of people are kind of familiar with that because that's how like the U.S. is kind of organized, whether it's a city council or state legislature or assembly, or the national government.
Yeah, we call it the Board of Agenta also. So you arrived 26 years ago, and you came to this wonderful church. It was already on Washington Street, right?
That's right. Moved in 1927 out here, and we've added, one building after another. But I think we're through adding buildings. So, but I think Washington Avenue has got to be one of the prettiest streets in Savannah. It's a boulevard style with a lot of live oak trees sheltering it. So it's a nice spot.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
I was wondering, I don't want to show my ignorance, but I am curious, what happened to the building on Monterey Square where
we ended up selling it to the city, and they, and it was a church building, and of course there would have been a service of deconsecration or something, but then they tore it down and put up that terribly functional building, the science building of Armstrong.
Not too pretty on the square.
Yeah.
Today that would never be built,
No.
like that. But at the time, 1950, square footage, that was.
Well, why is it you sold your building? Did you already have the one out on Washington?
Well, we had bought. Yes, there was sort of a several year transition. You can imagine decisions are not always decisive. Churches, maybe like synagogues, are conservative in a lot of ways. So even to move was a very bold idea, and some did not want to move. So there was about a 10-year period where they held services, like Sunday morning were held in the new location in Ardsley Park, and then Sunday evening services back home on Monterey Square. And finally, I think the needle came over far enough that they sold the building and sold it to the city. And
Well, did the building on Washington, did your church build your congregation?
Oh yeah, we had built it.
You
built it in 1872. In fact, John Norris, that name, the architect who built several. He was from New York, but he relocated to Savannah, and the building sort of diagonally across from City Hall, that it's a federal building. That's a Norris building, and several others were designed by John Norris in the historic downtown.
No, I guess I meant the one out on Washington Avenue.
Oh, we built that one. Yes.
There, or you built?
We built. It was just in 1927, Ardsley Park was kind of the new suburb, the new development, and
Right.
So most of the houses in this neighborhood weren't even built at that time, and we put up a 2-story structure that now serves as our office and Sunday school buildings, but it was a open 2-story hall, but it was not meant to be permanently the sanctuary. They thought once we sort of got our foundation, the strength of the church, we would build a sanctuary. But then moving here and building that in 1927, that's our oldest building. I'm in it right now, the 1927. Then in with the Depression, again, things slowed down, and the ambition of building a sanctuary was delayed. And the present sanctuary, you probably have attended funerals or something here. That was built in 1956. So, and right now the sanctuary is decked out in all of its Christmas finery. You know, we decorate it and it looks pretty nice.
It's a nice, it's not just a building, it's more of a campus that you have there, which is really
Well,
nice.
it is, you're right. Yeah.
And when you arrived here, what did you think was needed for your community and the city, and how have things changed in the last 26 years?
Well, some things sadly have not changed, and one has been the poverty level has just stubbornly stayed. You know, it depends on who you're quoting, but you know, around 25%. And the city, you know, has grown. You know, there's you know, SCAD has just added so much to the vibrancy of the city. The Savannah College of Art and Design and other businesses, tourism, of course, is just skyrocketed. I mean, pre-COVID, but the aches and pains of the community are still there, and you know, I think communities of faith and the congregations try to address that and advocate for change, but a lot of that's persistent, and I think the ministry here at this church has tried to take the gospel that you know, charges us to care for the least and the lost, and you know, have a jail ministry. One of your congregants, Norman Hurst, started Backpack Buddies. You know, he moved from New Jersey and brought a wonderful idea, and not only your congregation, but dozens of congregations now support providing food for food insecure children on weekends in the public schools. And we're very involved with that, and a half dozen other hands-on ministries. And then most recently, the rabbi and I have gotten involved in a justice ministry, and the angle there, and I bet everybody on this Zoom and watching on YouTube later are familiar with sort of the angle on this, is that so many communities of faith are pretty good at mercy ministries of feeding hungry people, or you know, providing housing for somebody that doesn't have permanent housing, and you know, in a temporary way providing housing. But the root causes, what is causing people to be hungry and unemployed and lack of good medical care. And so this new coalition of faith communities, and for a year it was called Savannah Area Interfaith Justice Ministry. We have a new title now, some acronym JUST, about Savannah Together for Justice or something. But anyway, it really is very promising, because we won't neglect or abandon the mercy ministries, but we now can really push to see if we might change things. You know, an analogy somebody said is, if it's one thing if there's, you know, an occasional accident at an intersection and you say we need to get an ambulance location nearby there, you know, so that they can respond quickly to that occasional accident. But I mean, if every day there's an accident and you got an ambulance there, you need to redesign that intersection, and that's what my congregation is now saying. Let's redesign ways of caring for people on the margins of life. So that's part of our, and to me that's pretty exciting. Christmas Day, we're going to be having a fellowship time with a partner church in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and since Hurricane Marie, we have been going back and forth to Puerto Rico and have had some of the people from that congregation visit Savannah a couple of times. And to me, that just stretches our vision, you know, outward. That it's not just, you know, the inward looking people within the four walls of the church, but we try to be looking outward as much as we possibly can.
That's wonderful. And we know, you know, as your church has grown and different things have happened, that you've kind of tried to met the challenge. So what are the areas that you think Savannah still needs religious assistance? What are we lacking here that we can
lacking?
Well, in the future?
Gosh, that's a good question that probably a conversation would shed a lot of light on as people see different parts of the city. I think this is a wonderful idea that you have, where having an interfaith conversation and just building the ties of familiarity with others that you wouldn't ordinarily see. But the I think race issues are really a challenge right now. The pandemic, this COVID thing, has brought economic hardship to many people, and obviously health issues. I mean, imagine 300,000 Americans dying. I mean, it should make us cry every day about the toll that's taking on families. But then it's also revealed what's persistently been there, and that's the racism. And I think we all have to own up to it. In the Southeast, people have really strong either for or against Nick Saban, the Alabama football coach. But he wrote a very, very nice article, I thought, a month or two ago. And he was saying that he had really grown. I mean, he was a coach, obviously got a lot of black athletes that he's worked with very successfully for many, many years. But he said he just didn't see the racism. He said, I didn't feel like I'm a racist. But he said, it's built into the system, and we just don't even see it. It's like a fish in water would be he didn't use that phrase, but he said, just say it, systemic racism, and he said, a lot of my friends won't even say it. It's like it's a dirty word. And he said, it's there, believe me. I can see it the way, if he's speeding around town in his car, he's going to be treated differently than a black professional driving around the same way in the same kind of car. And that's just one little example. But so I think race would be one thing, and this justice ministry, which the rabbi and I are involved with, is an interracial group, and it's really to me one of the dividends of our monthly meetings, or however often they are, is you get to know some of the clergy and lay leaders in these other congregations, and you become friendly enough that you've got a rabbi with the best sense of humor. What a quick wit he has! But you can joke around with. There's a level of formality with people, but as you get to know them, you can be friendly and joke, and we're at that level right now, I think, in this interfaith, interracial program that we're working on. And so I really have appreciated that and valued it. But I'd say we got to keep working, diligently on race issues. And this group that we've got working just a week ago met 260 people. I think your congregation and my congregation had the most people on the Zoom meeting. Some congregations are involved, but it would be 2 or 3 people on the Zoom meeting. But that through a process of voting, this, probably some of you were on that meeting. But for this coming year, we're going to address affordable housing issues in some way that would be a measurable accomplishment, not just say, oh, woe is me, we don't have adequate housing for everybody, but say we're going to have some pressure point of change that will provide more housing for more people, adequate housing. So
and I'm looking forward to doing the research for that. But I think you make a great point. I mean, you've been here 26 years, I've been here 8 years, and the relationship between the different houses of worship have often been along the lines of race. And although we've had good relations with people who are African American and people who are, we say, Anglo or white, we certainly our closer relations have been with one side or the other. And it's really only recently that we've gotten to know each other well enough to call each other by their first names and to, call and ask for a favor, or to say hi. And a lot of that was because of this organization. It would be even more so if it wasn't all Zoom right now. But hopefully that Zoom thing will end in the next couple of months, and we'll be able to get back to meeting in person. So that's certainly been a significant change in this community. How about with your congregation? Have you seen your congregation grow through the years?
Well, I was called to a church that was blessedly already strong and already very engaged in the city. So it's not as if I had to cast some new vision or get something moving from a dead stop to 60 miles an hour. It would have been beyond my powers to do that. So I feel like I've been entrusted with something that's been moving along very well for 150 plus years. And I'm trying to keep it moving in the same direction and to, glorify God in the process. And I'm sure we fail or get a little lazy at times, but by and large, I think we're pretty faithful in that mission.
And what, Kathy?
Yes, two questions, Reverend. Do you have any, in your congregation, do you have any minorities that are members? And also, do you have any gay members of your congregation? And how does your congregation feel about these groups?
Yeah, yes on both. We're, I guess I would say that we are a big umbrella church, or a big tent. Maybe that's the image that they use. In that, I think we're made richer by having a diversity of points of view and opinions. And there are some communities of faith where the walls are a little narrower. Very clearly there are either doctrinal issues, theological ones that define everybody there. You have to sign on for that, or these sometimes thorny social issues of same-sex marriage or things like that. But I think in our congregation there's broad tolerance based on the Bible, biblical reasons. But I would have to say not everybody's on the same page on that, and ideally we're enriched that we're not all the birds of the same exact feather. And but we have a small number of African American members, but then we have several who are from Cameroon. And talk about a dynamic. There are more Presbyterians in Cameroon, the country in Africa, than there are in the United States. Presbyterians and Jews have always been a little bit the same. We pack a punch for a small number of people, and there's only a couple million of us in the United States. But I think both of our traditions value education, for example. So if you're pushing education, then you end up in pressure points of community leadership and often and service, and so small that we are. Well, in Cameroon, the Presbyterian and the word Presbyterian and Reformed in Europe, they're in Scotland there were the Presbyterians, but in Europe they were called Reformed Christians to distinguish them from, say, Lutherans. And the Reformed Christians ended up in Cameroon, and they were just these Cameroonians in my church. If they don't have a PhD, they feel like they dropped out of high school or something. I'm not. It's just amazing the serious commitment to education and the serious commitment to the church. One of the men in the church wanted me to go back for the annual festival in his tiny village, and there's a tiny village in Cameroon can be pretty hard to get to and very rough. I mean, an American outhouse is pretty nice compared to, but I don't know if the governing board just wanted to get back at me or what, but they insisted that I go to this annual festival, and it was amazing. I mean, I was treated, it was like everywhere I went, they would fix an enormous meal, and everybody was just so happy, welcoming. It was the fatted calf, the biblical fatted calf kind of thing. And they would cook these meals over, like over an open fire. I mean, enormous effort would go into it. And, but anyway, then we'd sit around and these people would argue about little details related to the presbytery or the congregation, lay people. And it was quite amazing because we don't do that here. We leave that to, a handful of people. But so anyway, we've got to answer your question. Yes. Yeah. We've got, all kinds of folks here and we're enriched by that, I think. And that's good.
And how about the larger Presbyterian world? Where do you guys fit within the system?
Well, we're part of the historic mainline denomination. Like there's the United Methodist Church, and a lot of people say, oh, I used to be Methodist, now I'm Presbyterian because it's closer, or one of my neighbors went there. But there are some differences as far as the theology and the way we organize the church, which is the polity, the politics of it, and how it's organized. But we're the mainline denomination, and in all the social things in the the last 50 years, a couple of other denominations have pulled away from the main denomination, And one of them is called the PCA, Presbyterian Church of America, and others the Evangelical Presbyterians. They're much smaller denominations. They're vigorous. They have, but they would say they're reading the Bible, accurately or something. Where I would say we are given minds so we can disagree on how we read the Bible and use our intelligence on interpretation. But in the PCA churches, only men's gifts are recognized for leadership, on the session or the clergy, the ordered ministries of the church are men only. And we, of course, recognize everybody's gifts, and God gives the gifts, and we want them to be put to use. So
yeah, it's really nice. It's nice that you at least, you have the ability to find your own way. With COVID and all that's going on, what have you done to evolve for this modern world?
Hasn't it been difficult on so many levels? Because our worship life is, for a long period, it was all by internet, a virtual worship service, which is not the same at all, as being in person. And then I think it was in early October, something like that, we started having in-person worship that only a small number of folks feel comfortable attending, but those that do attend, and we've limited it, it's very physically distanced. Everybody, couldn't touch someone if they wanted to in the room, and they're all wearing masks. So, and it's a very large sanctuary, but so we're doing that and watching with concern as the infection rates in Chatham County go up, because we may have to suspend that. But we're looking for that happy day when the vaccine, I guess, is here now, but when everybody can have it, so that we things can. We're missing another dimension, is just the fellowship life, and I'm sure your congregation, don't you have on Saturdays a big lunch every Saturday? I mean, you must be starving for that. I mean, you're getting meals together. I've attended those, and they're beautiful. They're wonderful. And but to be deprived of the community of faith coming together is really, really hard. So
yeah, and for us on Saturday, after we're starving, literally, and we're starving for camaraderie as well. So we're starving for food and camaraderie.
Yeah.
Right. So we did do a drive-in service at Kingdom of Life. We met the minister there through the organization that we're part of.
Roberson. Yeah.
And so we're going to do it again next month. So that was a lot of fun. But so every house of worship is trying to find their own way. And some are doing only offsite, some are doing a hybrid. What are you doing to meet the needs of the congregants who you can't go visit?
Well, we have a few occasions like what we're doing right now, and of course the clergy are making phone calls, and lay leaders in the church are reaching out, but it's not just visiting folks at home, but I mean, think of what those who are hospitalized now. Most hospitals have very necessarily very restricted visitation rules, so. It's very hard to comfort somebody. We've had a number of deaths. Sometimes we've been able to have a funeral. Sometimes we have not because of COVID.
I know it's been very difficult. I haven't been into the hospital except to take my kids there or myself, but I have not visited anybody in the hospital in 9 or 10 months. It's very.
We're getting out of the habit. We'll
I know. But again, what have you learned from this past year that you're going to take with you into the future?
Oh, wow. I thought I was going to sing a Christmas carol or something. You're giving me some really deep things to
definitely sing a Christmas carol. You have a lovely voice.
No, sure I do. Yeah.
Compared to me, you do.
We've been in a study group and room together once, and I don't think he ever wants to room again with me because I snore and all sorts of things. But I guess the learnings, adversity is supposed to bring us closer to God, and I think it really can do that if we're attentive and purposeful about it, to feel God's abiding presence and support. And I was once in this study group, and it was a rabbi, and we were talking about different funeral and wedding practices. And I mentioned that probably in a Protestant setting, if the bride's mother or grandfather died just days or weeks before the planned wedding, it would probably be a very muted ceremony, or it would be, and it's almost hard to imagine weddings now, right? Because with COVID, but instead of having 150 people there, it would be just the immediate family, or it would be postponed, regardless of the inconvenience and cost because of this death. And the rabbi, and I had gotten to know him pretty well, but anyway, he said, we wouldn't do that. And this may vary from rabbi to rabbi and synagogue, but he said, we would affirm life even if the mother died the day before. I mean, we'd be sad about that part, but adversity is our history. And if there's ever a chance to celebrate love and life, we're going to seize it. And so he said, it wouldn't be a quandary. I mean, the families wouldn't, people wouldn't say, I can't believe they're going to carry on with that wedding, because it would be affirmed that, we're grieving grandmother, but gosh, we're for life. And I guess in this COVID thing, I cherish every moment of. The other night we had an outdoor music thing, and there were these families, and we were all masked, but the children were just running around, and it was like, wow, affirm life. Anything with life and love, you want to cherish that. And so I guess that would be something to take away from this season of COVID.
Yeah. And are you guys going to have babysitting for
No.
Because I didn't even get a call. I want to double check.
You get a pass this year.
All right, because I've been the last couple of years.
Children are a little dangerous. I mean, they don't even look like they're sick, and they'd be super spreaders or something.
Well, I used to do it every year with you guys, and then I married somebody whose family's Christian. She's Jewish, so we always go spend Christmas with them. But this year we will not be doing that. So I've been doing it on Easter every year with you. So a real pleasure. Anybody have any questions before we conclude?
You got 1 minute. I'm looking at the clock here. Yes, sir.
Oh, is that all? Okay, now I won't. I was just going to thank you for affirming life and all. And unfortunately, some of the statistics that you see on TV every morning are horrifying, as you mentioned, the 300,000 deaths. But even worse than that, not worse than that, but in addition to, it's hard to put an equivalence there. But you see things that are potentially in the offing, the number of people that are going to be evicted because of, when you mentioned housing as one of your initiatives, and also I just saw on TV, one of the Chicago food shelters, they said that they've increased like 50%. They've had an enormous amount of people who are first timers that are coming there in long lines that you see there. Yeah. Do you notice that in Savannah?
We're away from the downtown, which shelters us a little bit from things like that. But I know that the need is very great here, and that Second Harvest has more people than the food that they have to distribute, and there's just great need, and we need people like you, Mr. Rosendorf, to be aware of it and try to do something about it, advocate for it. I mean, the political climate has not always been conducive to that. Yesterday, my wife was just, grieving about immigrant families separated. I mean, in America, just think of that. And it may not be happening right here in on Monterey Square or someplace, but it's we're responsible for that if it's anywhere, in our country. And so, there's just a lot of rough edges around right now that we need to be doing our little part on. Can't maybe solve all the problems, but we can help, do something.
Who knows? A couple of weeks we'll be in next year, and hopefully it'll be a wonderful year for everyone. I know you need to go to next meeting, so I want to thank Reverend Williams again. I'm sure I'll be seeing you a lot at different meetings throughout. We're the same Rotary. So again, we really appreciate all you're doing. Wish you a Merry Christmas. Hope you have a wonderful time with your family and friends.
Well, thank you, and happy
everybody.
Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. And we'll be starting up again in January with Rabbi Interviews. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.